Hi, this is David Roseberry, and I'm sitting here with Shawn McCain, and I've been following Shawn's work for a couple of years. He's a church planter in South Austin, and I was at his congregation last night for Ash Wednesday. It was an incredibly warm, receptive, wonderful congregation filled with life and a lot of babies.
A lot of babies.
And Shawn, we've been talking together for a couple of years. To the extent that I've been able, I've been trying to encourage you on this work. But you've been blessed. I mean, there's an opportunity here, and you've seized it, and things are really, really going well for you, I know. So let's just step back and what does God do? What has God done here that's been really remarkable?
I think that's really the right question too, because folks will ask, what's working? Like, what did you plan? How did you strategize this? And it's frustrating for them to constantly hear the response. Look, to be honest, the secret is I don't really know what I'm doing.
Right.
In a lot of this, but God knows what He's doing. And so there's a sense of this. It feels like we're just being caught up in something that God's decided to do. And a lot of that is honestly come about by the community of leaders that I have.
Really?
So kind of my constellation of mentors, but also even internally in our community, the people who are willing to stick their neck out, get their hands dirty, and really listen to what God is inviting us to do, and then taking the risk to actually do it together.
Right.
I think if there's anything that's really been the thing that God has used is a bunch of willing people who are ready to work, but even more eager to pray.
Right.
And so it's not, we're not a risk averse kind of congregation, but we balance, I think, the ability to experiment, to try something and to fail, and that be okay, with a sense that whatever happens, we're going to do it together, and we're going to celebrate it together, and we're going to experience it together, and it's really helped us.
So you've done some things that have not worked in terms of maybe catching on.
Plenty of things,
right. But you have done one or two things that you would look back on today and just say, that was the moment things started to get some traction. Any idea, looking back, what was the one or two things that you think not only God did, but you planned for or you thought about?
Yeah, I know what you mean. There's these moments, these kind of milestones where something had happened, some sort of passageway where we look back and remember. One of them, I think, was deciding as a launch team how we were going to begin using our resources. It was kind of a
financial resources,
financial time. What was the way in which we were going to spend ourselves? I remember having a conversation in our living room with our launch team, and there was kind of this electricity in the room of, what if instead of spending thousands of dollars on a sound system or looking for the right location, what if instead of first the website, what if we bought a chalice and said, as a statement of faith, saying, this church will be planted only by Jesus.
Wow.
And is
that what you did?
We did.
Yeah. Wow.
And it wasn't, honestly, it wasn't some sort of brilliant theological moment. There's certainly, something there, but for us, it was really an act of faith to say.
It's like an Ebenezer, right?
It totally was.
Yeah.
And that chalice we use to this day. So for many of us in that launch team, when we see that chalice, it's not just some beautiful, ornate decorative piece.
Right.
There's a story attached to this that helps us remember rightly, this is something that God has brought about. And so I think that kind of posture toward a curiosity of the work of God and wanting to participate in it has been a really formative piece of our DNA. It'll always be a part of us. So some things like that where we've said, instead of doing maybe the pragmatic, functional thing, what if we risked having faith?
Well, when we spoke, what 3 years ago, when you started, you wouldn't budge off South Austin. You had a vision for it, and you have pressed in on that vision. You've collected people around you, but every church planter's got to decide or has to negotiate the idea that he is the visionary, but there's a team around him. You have to invest in them so they get the idea, but you can't give it all to them.
Right.
You've got to embody it. how have you negotiated that vision? Because you get a lot of people, leaders that are supportive, and yet you're clearly the point of the spear.
Certainly. You got to listen to your people, but I think what you're describing is the need for leaders to first listen to God.
Yeah.
And like our launch team is, and the leaders in our community now, they are so willing to get behind the vision, but in a lot of ways they need to hear from you first.
Right.
And so I've noticed that my role has been a lot of define reality. What's the reality? What's our current situation that we're dealing with? And then give us that ballpark that God has allocated for us as kind of in a visionary kind of way. Right. Guys, for us it's been describing what life together in the goodness of God looks like in South Austin.
That's kind of your motto.
And that's
your
our vision,
theme,
life together in the goodness of God. And our mission is practicing our faith in a way that changes us and benefits others.
Right.
So in laying out that and our values rooted sacred kingdom community, I've in a way given our leaders a place to then discern and fill out and pray in all of the strengths and the gifts that they bring to the table that I don't have. But I kind of can, this is the vision that Michelle and I think got from God when, in the first place, when thinking of South Austin, because we're not even from this area. Mm-hmm. But in prayer, there was a moment in which God really clearly put a place on the map and said, here is your parish of sorts, geographically. Here's where my peace is for you, is the word that God had spoken to me. And that was the image, that was the vision that was attached to that sense of calling. So to come into town and say, hey, this is what God's calling us to do. Do you all want to participate with this? There was a great deal of enthusiasm. It wasn't so fleshed out that there wasn't space for others to participate. It was broad stroke enough that it could provoke people's imaginations and their desire to jump in.
That's a great way to say it. That it's a bucket that you bring, that people put their ideas into, and they own part of it, and it becomes something that is a product of the community. You're an Anglican church, and I saw that last night. You're very ceremonial, very liturgical, and just wondering, how that working for you here in South Austin, because it's a little countercultural. You're in kind of the Bible area. There's a lot of big box churches around. There's big, huge, Bible churches and things like that. And you're kind of swimming against that current. How has being a ceremonially oriented Anglican, I'm not saying high church, but you're clearly invested in some of the ceremonies and the higher elements of Anglicanism. How's it working here?
So when we're in Santa Cruz, it's the same way it's worked in Santa Cruz, where we planted a church as well. I think I have kind of one gear. I'm weird. I'm okay with it being different as a Christian, and I think it fits Austin just as well as it fits Santa Cruz.
Yeah, because Austin's weird too, right?
If you're counterculture, you fit right in. That's the norm.
Yeah.
So there's enough of a weirdness about it that just seemed to be palatable, at least. I wear my collar around town. I work in a co-working place where I'm just shoulder to shoulder with all kinds of people.
And you wear your clergy collar.
I wear my clergy collar.
Right.
And I hear things like, thank you so much for wearing that. Now we know who we can talk to.
Oh, wow.
Or, well, that's, in a complimentary way, that's really different. That's weird. And even when folks at my office will, the folks that work there and give tours, they'll give tours and come by my desk and say, and here's Shawn, he's the priest here. They've taken ownership of us. But we don't do it, and I hope this is expressed, and I think people get this. We aren't appreciative of the ceremony and the beauty involved in our tradition because it's ancient, even though that's kind of cool.
Right.
And it's appealing in a lot of ways. There's a rootedness about it that's beautiful. But far more interesting to me than that is its ability to put on display the gospel.
Right.
And to be a fresh invitation for people who've kind of heard it all, seen it all. Well, you haven't seen this.
Yeah.
And there's a fresh hearing for the gospel. And not just a hearing, but a way to participate with their bodies.
Yeah.
To sense, to experience the gospel in a new way. And there's story after story in our church of people who have either given up on church or have just been burnt out or have never come to church in the first place, or lapsed Catholics, or just folks who are disoriented, and they come into a very sacred space that's mixed with this really confusing hospitality, this plainness. And there's something about the church that's just kind of worked that way.
That's a great way to say it, that you have people in your church that have been either burned out or burned up or dropped out or whatever, and you can say to them, I know you probably have seen everything about the church. You haven't seen this. And what I really responded to last night was the reverence, this. It's not simple, but there's an ease to it. But there's a reverence behind it, and there's a love of God. I know it's not ceremonial just for the ceremony's sake. It, like you say, it does express a deep faith in God, and an appeal for His presence, among His people. So it's an amazing place. So glad to be with you. Just in a nutshell, what's next? What's kind of the big thing for the next couple of years for you?
Well, as a church plant, I wasn't anticipating growing as quickly as kind of things took off.
Yeah.
And so it kind of feels like it's right at the edge of my fingertips.
Right.
We just had a really great leadership retreat where I huddled up our leaders and said, okay, here's what I think God's putting on our heart for what's next. Help me fill it in again. And so there's another kind of turning point for us. And I think a lot of it has to do with continuing to invest in not just preserve to be preservationist, but to identify that God has given our church the gift of family. There's this culture about us that we need to keep our eye on and protect and cultivate. So there's something there for us in just our family culture. And you saw last night, like 30, 40 kids.
Oh my gosh,
it's hard to,
yes.
There's a family culture necessarily there. But also there's
as a preacher, you just kind of have to tune them out.
I noticed, I've tuned them out. I noticed that it was a little bit of a culture shock. Maybe like, there's a lot of kids here.
Right, it was.
Totally used to that.
And saying the words "pay attention" doesn't really help. Right?
Yeah, right. The other part of it is for us as a church plant, we're heading into the season of maturity where we've got to put down roots and take up a corner of space in our neighborhood and say, we're here, we're not going anywhere, we're neighbors.
Yeah.
So there's a challenge for us to kind of, to use like sacramental terms, have real presence in our neighborhood. So we're trying to connect the dots there. What does that look like? And I think we have some interesting ideas about how to pursue that.
Well, God bless you. It is a great church. You call it Res Austin, but it is Church of the Resurrection in Austin. Great place. You visit his website and you'll see all kinds of great things. He's got an eye for design, and the artwork is just beautiful. It's the full package, really, of what an Anglican church can offer. And that's what's so refreshing to me when I came here to visit. I wanted you to see it or meet Shawn, and some of you know of him, but here's a little update on Res Austin. So thanks for watching, and thank you, Shawn, for the time together.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thanks.